Thank you. I haven't started yet. I'm starting in a minute. Hey, good afternoon or good evening. I am thrown off because I'm off this week. So while most of you are going to work, I am playing this week. This is Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me. I am all over the internet. I'm on Gmail, kids can see ghosts at gmail.com. Phone number 765-205-1959. And I'm all over Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I just started TikTok, so literally no one is really following me. And every social media site that you can think of. Hey, I want to start right there and tell you guys that I have two things going on right now. One, I'm chewing gum. I think that's completely unprofessional. However, I have to do it. And I apologize ahead of time if you hear me smacking it because I have 4 cups next to me. And these 4 cups contain medicine that I have to drink, one right now at 5 o'clock, and every 15 minutes I have to drink it. So it's going to be nasty. I'm going to try to chug it right now. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, continue. We are going to talk about twin flames today. So here we go. I need a cheerleader because I'm getting ready to hold my breath. Hold on. Yuck, I can't do it. I gotta finish the rest in like 5 minutes. That's some nasty crap. So in case you're wondering what I'm doing, I disclose some things and I'll disclose this. This stuff is what I'm drinking because I actually have a colonoscopy in the morning. So got to get prepared for it. It's something that all of you should do when you get of age, or if you're already of age and you haven't done it, make sure you do it because we're losing people due to colon cancer. And the best way to prevent that is with early detection. It's one of those things that can be cured when you catch it in the very early stages. So make sure you do it. All righty. So we are going to talk about one of my favorite blogs. This is blog, 18, and it's called Twin Flames. In order to keep up with my podcast, make sure you go to my website, LisaLigginsChambers.com. I have to laugh when I do stuff like that because I know my best friend is listening and she knows I like to give my sexy voice sometimes. I'm waiting on her to laugh. Okay, keep up with the blog. Twin Flames is actually a series of 3 blogs, and I did get a lot of questions about these kids. What we're doing, or what I'm doing in this blog, is I am introducing 2 different kids in this blog to you. I'm going to introduce child F and child G. These children are siblings, And this gets a little bit scary. So if you have a sensitivity to hearing about the paranormal, the world of the paranormal, this is probably not the blog to listen to today or maybe next week. Because I'm going to try to act out some of this stuff. Now, I am no actress. However, I'm pretty good at talking about abnormal psychology. And this is one of those cases where these two children actually frightened me. And I don't get frightened easily by, um, you know, the paranormal world, but this was a bit challenging for me. So let me kind of set it up for you before we even talk about the blog so that you will have a visual for what was going on. So these were actually kids that I was going to work with in therapy. These were also two children that were on our waiting list, but because of the degree of their experiences with their parents, it was extremely traumatic. So I remember we pushed them up, and then I was responsible for their care. So this is actually a really difficult case. Um, and the reason that I even thought about twin flames is because I was reading something that mentioned twin flames. And if you aren't familiar with what twin flames, what the meaning is, I used to hear about it quite a bit when I worked with nebulous children. And so it is when you feel in your soul that someone is so matched with you that you almost feel as if they're your twin, that your body is one with that person. Have some of you had that experience where you actually met someone and you thought this person is very similar to me? I have. I've had that experience. And this person actually looked like me. And so I remember that person very well. And it's kind of like your soul seems divided between your body and that person's, or you two have met in the past. And so that person either became healing for you, or someone you loved, or someone who inflicted the most amount of pain for you. These two children were very, I almost feel like, they were so similar that they should have been twins. I say that about my last two babies as well, that they're very similar. And so they remind me of twins. And that's what these kids reminded me of. They reminded me of being twins. And so, you know, I was in an office. So this was building 2. If you don't know what that means, go back to the blog and start looking at it. Because when I say building 2, by this point you should be familiar with what that means. So this was in building 2, and remember, this is the same building where the kids saw the little ghost boy. This is the same building where child A saw all the entities or the demons going up the stairs. We talked about all that stuff. So this is the same building. So imagine what these kids saw if you remember those blogs. And so these are two kids who, and I want you to picture this, there was not a time where I sat in the chair. The typical, doctor sits in the chair, or psychologist, same thing, sits in the chair, and then people lay on the sofa or they sit in the chair and you do talk therapy. That didn't happen with these kids, okay? With these kids, I was always on the floor, which is fine with me because I go with the flow. But I was always on the floor. I was one of the kids, and you'll understand this in a few minutes, always sat really close to me, almost on my lap. The other one sat kind of in the middle of the floor guarding us. Okay. So this room that I had, this office that I had, also contained 2 closets. So all of these little small details are going to be very important as we talk about these babies. I'm going to try to finish this up really quick. Yuck. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so these two kids, both of them, um, experienced a significant amount of trauma. Trauma at the hands of their biological father who could see ghosts. I'm going to follow the blog closely on this again because it's so much information. And you guys know I typically don't do that because I can tell these stories like the back of my hand because they're so memorable for me. But this one is a bit different. So their father inflicted the trauma. Okay. He could see ghosts. He took it to a level that I try to convince you all not to do, which is a demonic level. I try to talk to you guys about not befriending demons and not using Ouija boards and all of those different things. And of course, I can't save the world, but I would certainly like to save you all a lot of headache based upon, what I've seen. And this is a prime example. So, what was interesting about this family, not uncommon for me because I'm used to it. I was used to it and I'm still used to it, where there will be a parent or both parents who could also see ghosts along with their children. So this was a situation where the father saw ghosts and so did these two children. These two children could see everything in their home that the father could see. For example, the father could see demons in the home. The children could see demons in the home. The children confirmed that there were demons within their home all the time. The children talked about a demonic portal was in their basement, according to their dad. I specifically asked those kids if they saw the portal, and they said yes. What's a portal? An opening. It is an opening, according to these kids, where these type of demons can go in and out. I described that in more detail in the blog that's after this one, so blog 19. But you have to imagine this in your head. So to these kids, they are seeing these demons come in and out of this portal, and their father would report them coming out of the portal as well. And so what their father was doing was trying to prevent the kids from being possessed by the demons and the demons taking them through the portal. And he tried unsuccessfully, according to these kids, to close the portal. So what he did was, because he couldn't close it, he tried to protect the kids in another way. That was a problem. That was the problem. He was trying to protect them in another way. And I have to tell you, based upon the stories that I heard back then, I do believe that in his heart, he was trying to protect them. Again, this stuff is very scary to people, especially dark angels or demons. The part that I could agree with was his plan, were his feelings to protect these kids. However, his plan was a crime. Did you all receive that? His plan was a crime. And that was the problem. He believed that the only way to keep his kids from being possessed and taken away by these demons was to do what? Murder them. I'll let that sink in while I drink the last of this. God, that's nasty. So Dad's plan, sorry guys, was to murder them. And he tried. Okay. So let's go into psychology for a minute. I know that was heavy. I want you to picture it again. He was trying to prevent his kids from being taken away into the portal by demons. That's what he thought was going to happen to his kids if he didn't intervene and get rid of them on his own. Now, he loved his kids, but this is where psychology comes into play, guys. Yeah. Holy cow, is right, girl. This is where psychology comes into play. The first thing you heard, out of everything you heard from what I just said, you heard attempted murder, right? Okay. So, with that in mind, what do you think had to be done? Well, first of all, let me give you a little bit of background. He told his children his plan. I tell you, kids tell us everything in the schools. These kids told the school, we are mandated reporters. And so the teachers contacted the authorities. It was rightfully so, and the children were removed from the home. I'll answer your question in a minute. That's a good question. A very nice lady just asked, how do you even cope as a small child? And I will answer that. So the children were removed from the home. The children were court ordered or state ordered to attend psychotherapy. So they didn't have a choice. When it's court ordered, you don't have a choice. The father was in custody, so he was in jail. Okay. So when I met these kids, this is when I get into the picture. So when I met these kids, this is all of the information. My thought, and I remember, I put my head down like, okay, I didn't call them nebulous children back then, but I do now. And I remember sitting at my desk thinking, I have another set of wonderful, nebulous kids on my hand and a father who can see ghosts as well, who tried to kill them. Okay. How did they cope? Well, that gets interesting, especially with kids, these two kids in this situation who could see the same things as their dad. So we're going to talk about how they were able to cope here in just a second. So here's when it gets really interesting. I always talk about how we have to do structured clinical interviews when we encounter a client. This can be done with psychological testing or therapy. Remember, these two kids were therapy. They were going to do psychotherapy with me. And so this was interesting because what I decided to do was to break these kids apart and interview them. Then I interviewed them together. And then I interviewed the social worker that was assigned to them with the state of Missouri. This was in Missouri, and this was also Building 2. And there was something else I was going to say. The social worker comes into play here pretty heavily. So I want to talk about the interview that I had with this social worker too. And if I think of what else I was going to tell you, I will tell you in a minute. All right. So the structured clinical interview was interesting because I learned immediately that these kids could see ghosts. And they were scary. Oh man, were they scary. I had not experienced an entire family, I don't think, that could actually see ghosts in this shape, form, or fashion, because remember, Child B's family could see everything, but the parents didn't cave to dark angels. This was a family who focused on dark angels, and it started with day one of me seeing these kids. So back then, from my professional opinion, I thought for these kids to go through all this, they were coping pretty well. Were they traumatized? Yes. Yes, absolutely. But take it to another level mentally when you think about these kids, because they also understood what happened because they could see demons too. Does that make sense? So they could see them, so they knew, and they can see this portal like their dad did, so they were not upset with their dad. These two focused heavily on trying to get someone to believe that their father was trying to help them. Now I can go off on a tangent with that psychologically, okay, with you all, but I'm not going to do that. Let's just stick to what these children told me. They almost sounded as if their dad was in a battle, if you will, to win their souls. He just didn't want them to go. We also know how powerful and manipulative demons can be. Okay. Mental health also came into play with the dad, not just because of murder, but if this father came to you and told you these things, a lot of you, like I did, well, he didn't come to me, but when I started reading the notes about him from the social worker, I thought, WTF, because I'm human. It was right to imprison him. It was right to remove those kids. And it was absolutely correct to have them in therapy. Okay. So I actually did a lot of interviews for this one to try to help these kids. So these two were incredible children. One was a boy and one was a girl. And what they were doing was they were talking. They started out talking about the situation and seeing ghosts and what happened with their father. With these kids, I didn't have to fight hard through their trauma to get them to talk to me. They just did. Um, and there were a lot of great, scary, but great conversations with these kids. So what I did was I kept them talking, which was good because some of you already know you don't have to be a psychologist to get people that have been traumatized talking. And when they talk, that is a relief. So here's what made me mad about this whole thing. The state social worker really, and I'm going to tell you like I thought, really pissed me off about these kids. Really pissed me off. These two kids are two of the reasons why I decided to start writing this blog on behalf of children. This social worker came to me and told me that these kids were quote crazy like their father. And I put my head in my hands for a minute. Um, because all of you who listen to me know that drives me insane. Me insane when people judge these children. It was so wrong for her to say this about him and these two kids, not him, both kids. And it's never effective. Never effective. It leads to improper treatment. It leads to biases, quick medication. And you know what? She wasn't very nice to me either. So we had a problem, right? This is what I did. I calmed my behind down so that I can work with these kids because she was extremely disrespectful toward these children, toward that father, and she was disrespectful toward me. Because here's a sidebar, and I don't think I mentioned this person anymore because she made me mad. I still remember it. She told me these kids claim they see ghosts, and I said, well, they told me they do, and I'll never forget this conversation with her. And she said, well, you're just as crazy too, and I am not going to let them come to you anymore. She said, I'm not going to let them come to you anymore because you are not helping them by giving into um, their delusion, something like that, of seeing ghosts. Mm-hmm. Mental health professionals should never use the C word to describe people. Nope. Some people use it as a slang in slang, and I use it sometimes when I'm saying, "Oh, that's just so crazy" or something like that. But to describe your clients that way, it's just wrong. You don't do that. And because these kids were being so open with me, I actually fought and went higher than this social worker to keep them within my care as long as I could, because that is treatment. What I did was I went with the flow with these kids for what they need. So it was very unstructured. So let me give you a visual of these children because that's really important to me. Beautiful children, just strikingly beautiful. Ever seen somebody and you just go, whoa, that person is just gorgeous, and you can't take your eyes off of them? That's how beautiful these children were to me. And very sweet considering what they were going through. They were very lovely babies. So they must have been, and I'm thinking about their size, and I haven't looked back at their stuff, but I remember them probably 8 and 7 or 8 and 6. The younger one was a female, and the older one a boy. And I had the opportunity to ask these kids a ton of questions about what was happening in their home. For example, what did the demons look like? Yeah, they were very young. Where did they see these demons? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the next blog next week. I mean, the next podcast next week from the next blog. But this is how this little girl spoke to me. They're in the basement, in my ear. They can hear us. If you didn't just hear me, I said they can hear us, and they're in the basement. And so the boy would talk to me a lot, but not like the sister. And the boy was pretty quiet and just sat. I had a bean bag, a blue bean bag, and he would just sit on the bean bag. And he was turned toward those closets. Remember those 2 closets that I talked about earlier in the podcast? And remember, I said in an earlier podcast that I did not like those closets. Remember that? Well, those were the 2 closets that he just sat there and stared at, didn't really even look at us. And she was always either on my lap, which I don't typically do. But in this case, these kids were so traumatized, I just played the mama role. Do what you have to do, right? To help kids. And I found out from her, because she constantly whispered in my ear. And so when she would talk about the demons, I started asking her, sweetheart, why are you whispering? And she was like, they can hear us. They can hear us. I'm like, who? Because remember, I prayed over the office, and she knew that. And she said, they're hiding in the closet. Whoo! Remember, I said I hated those closets? And she said, they're hiding in the closets. They're hiding in the closets. They can't come in here. They're not allowed in here. And she was right. They were not allowed in my office. She was right. And she was whispering in my ear like that because she believed that the dark angels could hear them talking to me about them from the closet. What that meant is that these kids told me that the dark angels in their home followed them to their therapy session, and if they speak too loudly, they could hear them talk, which is why she whispered. Which is why she whispered and why she stayed close to me to whisper to me. So literally, somebody said, "Nope, I'd be running for the door." Literally, she was sitting on my left side and I was holding her, and she would get like up, like really close, like an infant, to my ear, and she would be like, "They can hear us. You can't talk too loud. They can hear us." And so that's what I dealt with her. A little boy sat in the middle of the floor facing the closets. And so I had the little sister whispering in my ear, practically holding me, and I'm holding her like she's an infant because she didn't want the demons in the closet to hear what she had to say. And the little boy is standing guard in case they come, is sitting guard, sitting there. I have my eyes closed, sitting in the middle. There was a wall. There were two closets, but there was a nice size, partition in the middle. And so he's sitting in the middle, just guarding it. And he said they can come out of the closet at any time, and he has to be on guard because they followed the kids. They told me, and I thought, oh my God. It was scary. So she continued to whisper in my ear through it all. I'm not just pausing because of the water, I'm pausing because of my memory of these kids. Because it was really deep. It was really deep. They were very close in age, they looked almost identical, they had these same supernatural experiences. And what they kept telling me about over and over and over again is there's a demonic portal in the basement. They kept telling me that over and over and over again. And so, what they started to do after that was to talk to me about their experiences with these dark angels, especially in the basement. And so, what they would do is they would describe what things look like, and they would describe how it feels, and how they wouldn't go in the basement because it was too scary, and how dark it was, and how they didn't go in the basement because their dad wouldn't let them, and things like that. But every time this child, the female, talked to me, it was always in a whisper. And she and I were actually facing the closet. So the little boy was kind of in the middle of us. And then we were actually facing the closet too, because she wanted to kind of sit that way so that we can see if they came out the closet. Well, you all know, you know me by now, that I kept a Bible in my office because I really felt like this building was haunted for numerous reasons. And this was one of them. And so these two kids actually did see the little ghost boy too, down on the first floor. And I don't know if I wrote about their experience with him or not, but they did. And so these were kids who can see pretty much everything. That they focused on dark angels because that was their world and that's what was in their house. And so it became really heavy too because of the nature of why I was seeing these kids. And I tried repeatedly to get this social worker on board, and she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. The little girl was more, when I would see her, this is off of the blog. It's something that I would put in the book, but in more detail. She was more candid, right? Little boy felt as if he had to do more protecting, which is not a surprise. He was older. and a little more used to this happening in the home and the dad. When they would even leave the building, this little girl stayed right on my side on the left, walking down the steps. I told you guys about this dark angel. I don't know if I told you all. When you would go down the steps, there was a building because the steps went straight and then there's a big window and there was a building outside. These kids used to see that dark angel that would stand on top of the building too. And they would focus on it. Like when we would walk down the steps, they would kind of go, there he is. There's a dark angel right there, which is the same one that other kids pointed to as well. So these weren't the only kids who saw that dark angel. So most of the kids that could see ghosts would talk about that angel on top of the building, and they would describe that angel as spreading its wings open, just like they do on the show Lucifer, spreading the wings open. And so they saw a lot of different things in the building. But what was really scary to me was just how they focused on the closet and whispering. The little girl and the little boy guarding the closets, and also how, their father was in jail for trying to murder them based upon what he thought was in the basement. So it became really scary. And I don't know if he was ever, I don't think he got out of jail at all because he did this. He actually harmed them. Or was planning to, and he actually told other people he was going to do it. Now I do remember that because the kids, I can recall, and the social worker telling me that he was, according to that social worker, delusional to the point where he started telling people too. So you know what, you would get kind of nervous. This is one of those cases where you're nervous because you're not sure how the kids are emotionally. Somebody asked about coping, if they are coping okay. You're not sure if these stories are accurate. If these kids do not have some sort of mental illness that's been transferred onto them from their father. There was a lot to, discern and decipher and just generally figure out with this family. And then to have one of the kids staying close to me, kind of whispering all the time about what's in the office, it became scary. And remember I had other experiences in this building. So before I even met these kids, I had other experiences with the paranormal in that building. So to talk to these kids and them kind of see, all along, remember, I had been praying over my office and trying to make the kids feel comfortable and, dealing with not letting dark angels into the room because, that has happened because I've talked about that before. With these kids telling me they're in the closet, it's kind of like I knew it. I don't like those. I didn't like those closets. I don't like them now when I think about them. And the office was really pretty, and so was the building. I mentioned that before, but then I have these two kids coming in going, I don't want to go near the closet. There are dark angels in the closet. It's scary. And one practically climbing on me. That's exactly how it happened. And when I probed more from the social worker, it was that person alluding to psychotic disorders, which you really don't see or diagnose in children. Can you diagnose a kid with schizophrenia? A couple people asked me that. You can, but there are other disorders that you can give to children. You don't have to go that route with them because they're very young. And we typically don't see symptoms of schizophrenia until a person is somewhere between like 19 and 23. I don't specialize in schizophrenia, but they're older. And so, you can go around schizophrenia, if you will, when they're this young. And so that's kind of where this social worker was going. And I felt like with the amount of trauma that these kids have, and some of you may agree with me, it was far too soon to go the route of, a psychosis. And I was very used to kids that could see ghosts, that I didn't want to disregard that part of their story. I didn't want to do that. There's a social worker who's talking about it right now, and she said that's a big diagnosis for anyone, especially little kids. It's way too big, because then you get into psychotropic medication. But in defense of this social worker, because we always have to see things from both lights, okay? Not understanding that there are people who actually can see ghosts, you can kind of understand why she thought this entire family was psychotic. You can kind of understand that, because think about it. A demonic portal in the basement, dark angels in the house, or demons in the basement, demons around the house, and then a father who wants to protect his children by murdering them from being taken by demons. If you think of it outside of the way that I'm telling the story, it could make someone in the mental health profession consider a psychosis for the entire family. But you have to be a little bit smarter than that, because you have to not only count trauma, but again, if you remove these kids from their parent, would their brain snap back to normal? And when I say normal, I mean without an alleged psychosis. What happened when these kids were taken away is that they had the same story as their dad, and they weren't mad at him. They understood in their own little minds what happened based upon their experiences and what they saw walking around their home. So you see, when I talk about this case, you see how it got really, it merged two issues that I talk about, which is mental health versus the ability to see ghosts, and how they go hand in hand. So these kids are a prime example for you of how to distinguish between the two. And they were really hard because in this case, they were little. Little kids have imaginations. They had just been through a trauma. They are saying, saying that they could see these things like their dad. And it does seem delusional, right? So if we kind of view it from that social worker standpoint, it does seem as if these kids are delusional, but you can't, I have an issue with treating people based upon symptoms. I know that just raised the eyes of some other mental health professionals. This is why I don't believe in that. The reason I don't believe in that is because symptoms are what? Indicative of something deeper happening in people. They're indicative of something deeper happening within people. So if you treat symptoms only, you're only scratching the surface. You need to find out the root of the problem. So if someone is crying all the time, you can't say, oh, let's diagnose them with clinical depression or major depression because they're sad all the time. Why are they sad? You haven't gotten to the bottom of it. You just want to say they have major depression based upon what you see with them crying, for example, or isolating themselves, for example. Why are they doing that? You have to determine that in order to treat them properly, in my opinion. And once you do that, if they do need medication because over time it's not getting better, then that's different. Maybe their symptoms need to be stabilized. But before you get to that route, you want to try to dig deeper. And that's how I teach my students when we have abnormal classes. You want to keep in mind and jot down all of the symptoms, but those are on the surface. Go deeper and look at your clients to see what's actually going on, because every problem, every symptom is a problem of something deeper. Does that make sense? Every symptom is a problem of something deeper. So dig deeper. And that's what I wanted to do to these kids. It's not just the trauma. How long has this been going on? Social worker couldn't answer me. Okay. When did it first start? Social worker couldn't answer me. Tell me more about the plan. How long had the dad have the plan? Social worker couldn't tell me. If you're going to go as far to say that kids like this have a psychotic disorder, you better be able to answer these questions. And that's where she went wrong. Okay. And so with these kids, I was able to go a bit deeper because that's what I needed to unpack everything that was happening to them. So, any questions? It was pretty scary. It also, here's something else before I let you guys go. It also made me think how powerful back then, how powerful is it to subscribe only to biblical principles to get rid of dark angels? And the reason that I remember thinking that is because, remember, I had prayed and cleansed my office, yet these kids were telling me that dark angels were in the closet. I did get an answer about that from someone who was there working with me. And that answer is yes. And the closet was not within the realm of the room. Does that make sense? The closet was back and considered outside of the room. So if they were in the closet, they could not come into the office. Does that make sense? Does that have to do with the doorway? What do you mean? Somebody's asking a question. What do you mean by a doorway? You mean the portal? Like with the crosses above the tell me a little bit more. Like with the crosses above the doors, was it protected? Yes, my office was protected. It was protected because I had prayed, and yeah. The closet was okay. So the way it was, that's a good question. No, the closet was not protected. The way it was explained to me by somebody at my job is that the closet was outside. That makes sense if you think about your closet and you push it out of the room, so they couldn't go beyond the door. That's what I was told, because my office was protected. They can huddle in the closet if they wanted to. I didn't pray in the closet. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I didn't pray over the closet. Remember, I wouldn't touch those closets. You ever experienced something that was just creepy to you and you just kind of went, yeah, nope, not going near it? Closets would used to do that to me. And these closets did that to me. But remember, I already had the thoughts in my head from other nebulous kids that told me what was in the building. So if I opened up the closet, I wasn't sure what was going to come out. I'm also very afraid of mice, so I wasn't sure what was in the closet. I did get brave, and I wrote about it in a blog, and at one point I did open up the closet, but I'm not going to tell you what happened. You got to read it in the blog because that's coming up. But yeah. So the closet, they could go into the closet, but they couldn't come into my office. And actually, that's what this little girl said to me. that they could, they're just in the closet. Wait, they're in there waiting. They can hear us. So I have to whisper. So she said they're in there waiting, and she had to whisper because they can hear us. In case you're curious, this is on Instagram. People actually interact with me on Instagram. Um, yeah. So anyway, that's that for blog 19. Take a look at it. I actually show you what some of this stuff looks like. Sometimes I look back at my blogs and go, oh my God, I write such creepy stuff. Blog 19. And what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit more about these children next week based upon the visuals that I added for blog 19, and then try to go through 20, because if we have enough time, we can actually do some of blog 20, which is really long. So we definitely won't finish that one next week, but we can certainly start it. Okay? So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm very flexible with that. I do want to answer one question that I've gotten over and over again, and I like it because if I say something to you and I'm speaking in what I call psychology terms and you don't understand what I'm saying to you, it's good for you to send me a message and let me know. I like that because sometimes I can't do that, and I try very hard not to. And I forget that some people don't know some of this stuff. So the difference between a psychiatrist versus a psychologist, that is a very common question. Psychiatrists are medical doctors. Psychiatrists go to medical school. Psychiatrists prescribe medicine. Some of them will do therapy, okay? And most of them do not. They will send them to us, psychologists. Some psychologists can write prescriptions. In Illinois, psychologists can write prescriptions if they are licensed to do so by the State Board of Psychologists in this state. In Mexico, they can write prescriptions. So it just depends on which state you're in. In Illinois, they can. The difference between the two, again, is that they go to psychiatrists go to medical school. Psychologists spend a lot of time in school as well. I spent 4, 5, 6, 11 years in school, plus 2 postdocs and 2 internships and a practicum. So we spent half of our life in school too, and we are considered, if you have a PhD or a PsyD, you are a doctor of psychology. School psychology, I also have that license. That is, you can have a master's degree or be a specialist in school psychology. So I was a school psychologist long before I had a doctorate in clinical psych. So I spent from 1998 to probably until now as a school psychologist. The last 16 years, I did more clinical psychology, and that's different than a psychiatrist. So I hope that clears that up for you all. You take care until, we talk next week. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks